This is a Film Stories original podcast.
When it comes to weight loss, no two people are the same. That's why Noom builds personalized plans based on your unique psychology and biology. Take Brittany. After years of unsustainable diets, Noom helped her lose 20 pounds and keep it off.
I was definitely in a yo-yo cycle for years of just losing weight, gaining weight, and it was exhausting.
And Stephanie. She's a former D1 athlete who knew she couldn't out-train her diet, and she lost 38 pounds.
My relationship to food before Noom was never consistent.
And Evan, he can't stand salads, but he still lost 50 pounds with Noom.
I never really was a salad guy. That's just not who I am. Even through the pickiness, Noom taught me that building better habits builds a healthier lifestyle. I'm not doing this to get to a number. I'm doing this to feel better.
Get your personalized plan today at Noom.com. Real Noom users compensated to provide their story. In 4 weeks, the typical Noom user can expect to lose 1 to 2 pounds per week. Individual results may vary.
We made this.
Welcome to the Xcast. The truth is in here. I'm your host, Sarah Blair, and today my guest is author Lauren Forry. Lauren!
Hi, Sarah!
How's it going?
I'm good. Thanks for having me back.
Excellent. Excellent to hear. I'm so happy that you're back with us. And guess what we're going to talk about today? We're not talking about an actual episode today. We're talking about Antibodies, the book, the tie-in novelization. So this is a little bit different, but since we're both authors, I figured it was appropriate.
Definitely appropriate.
And also, just a heads up, this is going to be full of spoilers. And apparently a lot of people have not read this tie-in novelization. So that's interesting. We did not have a mailbag for this episode. It's like Xcast history.
So we're going to make up what this book was actually about.
Yes.
And
nobody's going to know. We're going to write our own novel and just make up a bunch of stuff, and you guys will never know.
Exactly. Or they'll just be so interested, now they'll want to go out and buy your copy because it's still available.
True. It is. It is. Yeah. I actually recently purchased from Kevin J. Anderson himself, the author. He had some signed copies available of all of his novelizations. So I have the set now in paperback, and they're all signed.
That is awesome.
It was amazing.
I'm jealous. I'm very jealous of you.
I know, right?
Drive down to your house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my copy that I have, my original Antibodies copy, is a signed Borders Books and Music autographed copy. Do you remember Borders?
I do. I remember my sister getting rejected from Borders and she being really sad about it. Like when she was in high school, it's like, I can't even get hired by Borders and I love books. So who's going to hire me?
That's sad time.
She survived. She's okay.
She made it. So yeah, that's exciting. I love this copy, and it's a hardback.
See, mine's just a paperback that's not special in any way, shape, or form, except for the words that are inside.
But you still have a physical, and I have the Kindle version too. I have like all of the versions of this book.
You must love this book.
I do.
You know,
it's a fun one.
It was fun.
It's a fun one. Yeah. So this novel was purchased. This novel was published in 1997 by HarperCollins originally. And the author, I think I mentioned already, is Kevin J. Anderson. You've worked with him before, haven't you? On the
Not directly.
anthologies?
I never actually met him. The only person I had contact with was Jonathan Mayberry, the editor of the anthology.
Okay.
The individual authors, we didn't cross paths.
Gotcha. But your name is in a book.
It is.
With Kevin J. Anderson. So almost.
We're that close. I'll have to look up at the table of contents again and see how close were they to us. I don't even remember how they organized that, if it was chronologically or what, but anyway,
Yeah,
it's been a while.
that's exciting. Yeah. Also, for the listeners, if you haven't had a chance yet, I got to interview Mr. Anderson, and that was a fun chat. So go listen to that, because it's good talk. We had a good talk, he and I. Good times. We talked about all the novels and a few other things too, writing, and so yeah, that was fun. He's a nice guy. So Lauren, overall, out of 10, what would you rate this episode? Episode. I'm like in episode mode.
Well, it reads very much like an episode. I mean, and
it does.
The structure for all the novelizations, so it does feel like an episode. It feels like you're watching, which I think is the whole point of them. I would probably give it maybe like a 6.5 to a 7, but only because I love the story and the idea and the science. But I just feel like the last third of it just went on for too long. I'm going to talk about that later. And that could be my own personal preference. I feel like it should have or could have ended sooner, and instead it was kind of like repeating a little bit for me towards the end. But I think it's still really interesting, and it's like almost like a fun missing episode.
Yes. I was going to say maybe like a high 7 for me. Yeah.
So we're pretty close.
Yeah. So if you don't know, which probably, let's refresh everyone's minds about what the book is about. I'll read like from the beginning of the dust jacket. I'll just read you the first paragraph of the dust jacket. So this is kind of what it's about. When a disease-ravaged body is found in the smoldering ruins of the federally funded Dymar Genetic Research Lab, agents Fox Mulder and Dana Scully fear that a deadly man-made plague is on the loose. As the FBI agents investigating the X-Files, Mulder and Scully pursue the truth wherever it leads, even into the labyrinthine corridors of the FBI and beyond.
Ooh. That's Doctor Who. I don't know why I just did the Doctor Who thing.
So, we're dealing with a supposed plague, which is relevant,
Are we?
I think. Are we?
Maybe this is too relevant.
Yeah. So, Lauren, how about we jump in and discuss antibodies?
Yeah.
Are you up for it?
Let's
am. Do this.
Let's go.
So the book kind of opens a little bit with kind of like the first chapter is basically like a teaser from the show. I mean, it follows like an episode.
Yeah, it's very guy introduced, terrible things happen to him. Boom. Cue the cue the credits, title credits.
Exactly. So we know right off the bat we're dealing with something creepy, gross, and weird. So on par for the X-Files.
Very.
We don't know what it is, though, obviously. We just know that there's a lab that's been burned down and somebody dies. And it's because this weird thing happened. He got touched by this person rooting around. And then he just, like, exploded into things, like stuff happening through his body that's very mysterious and gross.
Yeah, I don't know.
Lightning inside his body and flashes and lots of things happening. Yes.
There's a lot of goo in this.
There is so much goo in this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, boom. There's the teaser. I think it's a great way to open the book because I was definitely drawn in from the beginning. So
what's nice about the opening too, I mean, it's just like a standard X-Files opening, but because it's a novel and it's written in a particular point of view, we not only see this poor security guard who's going to die, like walk through, we get to learn just like enough about him. that he has some dreams and, who he is and who's waiting for him back home. So, which you don't really get in an episode, that would be silly to like have a voiceover telling you, but it works perfectly in the structure of a novel. So then you feel even worse when this poor man turns into a cooling blotched corpse, as it mentions at the end of that
direct
chapter.
Quote.
Yes, the cooling blotched corpse. So then you feel bad.
Exactly. Get a little bit of sympathy in there for the guy. Yeah. And then after that, we go see Mulder, and he is at the FBI. What's he checking out, Lauren, at the FBI?
It's the bear, right? He's just...
The bear. And...
It's a stuffed bear in the Hoover building.
Uh-huh. And it's true. I talked to Kevin about this. He said that he went to the FBI building, and they have this stash, and only the FBI agents really get to see it. Like, they don't do it on tours or whatever. And it's all this weird confiscated paraphernalia from different cases, like RICO cases and all of that stuff.
See, my dad never told me about that stuff. My dad was an FBI agent, a special agent.
Yeah.
But he was based in Newark. He wasn't based in Quantico. I know he pulled a stash of guns out of a ceiling once, like a pizza place, because of mob stuff.
Wow.
But they weren't really interesting guns. They were just like...
Yeah, just regular guns.
Just regular, not lasers or, experimental X-Files stuff. But that was one of the most interesting things that ever happened to him as an agent. But yeah, I never got to see the cool stash.
Right?
I feel really...
You've been in the FBI building in Washington, right?
A long time ago.
Yeah, same.
Long time ago.
We did the tour on my junior class trip in high school. And I was so excited because that was like the peak of my X-Files obsession. So the whole time I was walking through the building, I was like, where's Mulder? Where's Scully? Where's Mulder? Where's Scully? I want to see everything.
I think I was even
I
younger.
had to stick with the tour, but...
I think we did it before X-Files even started. I think I was only like 6, and we did a family trip of DC. But the highlight of that trip is my dad, who was an active FBI agent at the time, forgetting to take off his gun and bringing it to the White House tour. So we showed up to the White House with a gun, but then so we got pulled aside, and then they did his background checks, determined that he was an actual FBI agent, and then we just got a special private tour of the White House.
Well, hey there. So, excellent.
Different times in the early 90s.
It's true. Oh, man. Yeah, so I think that's pretty cool. I really would like to see the bear. I want to know where it is in the FBI building. That's pretty fascinating stuff. How would you say that Mulder and Scully are set up like as characters in the book? Do you think he did a great job? And
I think their dialogue is really on point, and it would absolutely have to be. I know that's something when I've had to do the few novelization, or not, I haven't done a novelization, but like the short stories and stuff, you really have to capture who those characters are because people know them so well. They know them inside and out. And they're going to know instantly if that doesn't sound like Mulder or that doesn't sound like Scully. So like you read this and you can, in their dialogue, you can instantly pick up on that. You can hear Gillian Anderson or David Duchovny saying these lines. I think one of the things too that I wish there was a little bit more of, Scully reflects on her cancer throughout this. But there's not a lot of like the inner thoughts of Scully and Mulder overall, like beyond that. Like we get that a ton with these other characters that are just for this story, so we really know them really well. But for the Mulder and Scully, there's not much of that. So you kind of really have to bring what you know about them, I think, to this book.
Absolutely. And I think maybe one of the reasons for that is that I would imagine it's very, very difficult because with the publishing schedule, like, you know how publishing works, you've got to write ahead, but at the same time, you've got the television production going, and by the time the novelization comes out, you're going to have all these episodes that were written and produced that you didn't even expect or know about. So I think that's a great point that you made, because maybe keeping Mulder and Scully a little bit more vague and allowing what we know as readers and fans of the show to like bring more to Mulder and Scully in our own minds. And that way it makes it a little bit more, there's more leeway there.
Absolutely. Yeah.
that you can mess with. Yeah.
Because, you can't write anything that's going to contradict what actually happens in the TV show later, which was why when I did my short story, it was like after the fact. The new seasons didn't come into play with it. Like, all the original seasons were out, so I didn't have to worry about, is something going to change? We know what happens to them in the original season, But yeah, I think only really X-Files fans would be reading these to begin with. I don't know anybody that would see this and think, oh, this looks like an interesting sci-fi novel. I don't know anything about the X-Files. I'm sure there are some people out there that might, but that's not the audience.
Yeah.
And the audience, if they're reading and they want to read the novelizations, they're already into it. It's usually for diehard fans. So yeah, I think you just bring your own imagination, and then they're Mulder and Scully, as you read it.
Absolutely. But one of the things that he did incorporate is Scully's mention of cancer arc, because one of the characters, the little boy Jody Kennedy in this novel, he had leukemia, and that's kind of the catalyst for all of these things going on, because his father was a scientist working with nanotechnology, and he wanted to find a way to cure his son's cancer. So that's how all of this stuff started going on.
Which is sounds very noble, and it's like, oh, wouldn't that be great to cure cancer? But like anything, it just doesn't go right.
Exactly. What it wouldn't be an X-Files if everything went the way it was supposed to.
The antibodies, spoiler alert, are actually nanobots.
Yep.
Which I think was really cool, because we're still hearing about nanobots and what they might potentially do. And this was what, 30? How many years ago was 1997?
It was just last year.
Yeah, well, the 90s were only 10 years ago, and that's
10 years ago.
Going to be the case in my brain. But yeah, to talk about, like, people knew about nanobots then, and it was far more science fiction. I mean, we're obviously don't have nanobots that can, like, we can inject in people and cure diseases yet.
Or do we? Don't know. Maybe they're out there. Maybe Adam Lentz, or whatever his name is just covering it all up, and we don't know about it yet.
It's very possible.
Yeah.
Very possible.
Yeah. So also another thing that's kind of relevant today, but not in the best way, is like the idea of these nanobots spreading very quickly, because all it takes is one touch from, if you get like the guy, his name is Darren, not Darren, sorry.
The Dorman?
Dorman. There were Dorman. Jeremy Dorman. And I kept, the entire time I was reading this, I kept thinking Jamie Dornan.
You would.
And so every time I read his name, I was like, Dorman, not Jamie Dornan.
This would not be a very attractive role for Jamie Dornan, because this guy is literally like melting throughout the entire episode.
He's oozing. That is actually oil created by these nanobots, right?
Yeah, so I think what it was, they were blowing up the lab, and that was a whole part of the government conspiracy subplot that's in the book. So the not Jamie Dornan injected himself with like their earlier models, which weren't perfected. So it's wreaking like a bad computer. It's wreaking havoc. So it's basically like a autoimmune disease. It's like from what I gathered, it's the nanobots are attacking his healthy cells and and their messaging's all mixed up because they weren't right. So that's why it's dangerous.
Yeah. If autoimmune diseases had tentacles.
Yes. Yeah, the tentacles was weird. I don't know why he had to grow tentacles. And this is not something we're making up that nobody's heard. Like, there is literally parts in the book where this dude grows tentacles.
And then there was a guy in that it was the guy in the beginning, in the first scene. Yeah. The security guard. So he's in the morgue.
Scully's done her autopsy.
She's already done the autopsy.
So you get an autopsy scene in this book also.
Yeah. Nothing should be alive after an autopsy.
No. Unless it's a vampire.
And yet, here we are. But, we've had Mulder and Scully. They're on this they've been contacted because the CDC got a sample from somebody. Was it the veterinarian?
Before the veterinarian, they get a sample from the dead security guard, which is what sends them out there. And then they get the additional sample from the veterinarian because there's a dog that has the antibodies, the nanobot antibodies in them. And so they put kind of 2 and 2 together that there's 2 things out here now.
Yeah. And the dog was the first successful test.
And I will tell you, this is exactly why this episode could not be made as television for the dog. And not because there's a dog in it and working with animal actors. No, it's because there is a moment in the book where that not Jamie Dornan takes a gun and shoots the dog at point blank range in a lab. They
didn't even do that in Beethoven.
No.
They only,
And it's like, but the dog is fine because it's basically immortal from the antibodies. I'm like, I don't care. You can't take a handgun, any gun, any weapon, and cold-blooded just shoot a dog and kill it.
No.
So
they didn't even do that to Queequeg.
Yeah, and it was off screen. So for all the reasons, that is for me the only reason this could not, or the main reason this could not be an episode, because you couldn't do that.
No.
It doesn't matter.
There'd have to be a different. There'd have to be a different. Something different.
Yeah, if the dog was sick, I don't know, or the dog had a broken leg from an accident or something. I mean, the dog gets hit by a car, which that wasn't so bad because it was more like it was a total accident. A family road trip hits the dog. They take it to the vet. And that's how the Mulder and Scully end up with the sample from the vet. But that is fine. Then you see the dog recover. But taking...
No, you can't do it.
You can't.
Yeah, just no way. One thing that I really appreciated about this also is one thing I talked about with Kevin Anderson is that he would go wherever he was going to write about. So for Ruins, he went to the Yucatan Peninsula and hung out for a little while. And then, he went here. And that's one of the things that I really enjoyed about this book is the attention to detail. And, like, you feel like you're really there. He's so good at that.
Yeah, and that's what I love reading about those settings. It's very, man, I wish I could do that. Now we use Google Maps.
Exactly.
I mean, I still...
got Google Earth.
I try to visit some of the places. But, it's expensive. And there's also a pandemic right now.
Right,
so
exactly.
Impossible. But yeah, he's really great at the setting. And we always love the Pacific Northwest in X-Files. Darkness Falls.
Absolutely.
Is my absolute favorite episode.
Yes.
So it's nice to have Mulder and Scully back out there. And because we have the visuals of seeing episodes in the past that are set there, it just further adds to that atmosphere overall of the book.
It really does. That was a good choice for a location, I think. We talked about the dog. We have Jody, who is the son, who had cancer, leukemia, and then his mom. And she was married to the David Kennedy, who is the one who was, like, making this research happen. Like, he's the one who's like, I'm going to save my son. This is going to happen. And then his brother, Darren, obviously, but, like, we have David Duchovny and Darren Morgan, like, nice little tie-in there, I thought. But, so Darren ran off. He disappeared because he's like, this is going too far. I'm not going to have anything more to do with this. And he is gone. He's
basically a survivalist now, like, living in the grid compound, possibly.
Yes. And then David died in the original attack when the lab was, like, attacked by government people, but they tried to make it look like it was humanitarians, like, trying to save the animals and stuff. So.
Well, they should, because they shot the dog.
I know.
Except it wasn't real humanitarians anyway. It was just cigarette smoking man's people. Spoiler.
Government conspiracy stuff going on. And then the dog gets hit by the car by the vacationing, like we talked about, and then it just comes back to life. Yeah. But not only that, but the vet even, like, tried to put it down because it was just in too much misery. And even after all of that, it still came back to life and jumped off the table and ran away to find his boy, Jody. And the dog's name is Vader.
Yeah. There's a lot of Star Wars references. The kid has, like, tons of Star Wars stuff. The dog's a big black lab.
And there's even an Independence Day. He's got an Independence Day toy,
Yes.
he says. This was before David Duchovny peeing on the Independence Day poster. Mulder and Scully get to Portland, and they're trying to find... Everybody needs to find Jody, the boy. He's like the central... Everybody's trying to track him down in this book. It's like every chapter is like, we have to find Jody.
Well, because Scully thinks this is a kid with terminal cancer, and his mom's just kind of run off with him to protect him because they know that the lab blew up. But so Scully is totally worried because there's a kid out there that, he might need treatment. He should be in the hospital because she doesn't know he has the antibodies. But yeah, that's really kind of the main plot of the movie. It's not so much of them trying to figure out what this stuff is. It is far more, we have to find Jody. We have to track down this kid, and then we can figure out what else is going on.
And not Jamie Dornan is following them because he needs to get to Jody, or he thinks he needs to get to the dog first because he thinks the dog has the antidote that he needs to get well. Because if he gets the successful nanobots from the dog's blood and injects them into his own body, he thinks they'll reprogram everything and fix him.
That's what he thinks. That's never gets proven either. And then he realizes Jody's cured. Oh, it'll be even better to have a human blood as opposed to dog blood. But who knows if that would... They never did like any tests mixing the previous generation of nanobots with the current one. So he could have just ended up killing Jody and the dog.
Well, obviously it would have to be someone else taking the blood. He couldn't touch him.
Yeah.
Although, do you think it... Well, because then Jody gets healed, right?
We think, but Jody's original thing that he's being healed from is the leukemia, not other nanobots.
Right.
So who knows what would happen if the nanobots start fighting. I mean, the science in this is really, loosey-goosey.
Science is really heavy on the phi.
Who knows? We could basically make up whatever could happen, but we never find out.
He doesn't make it that far. Sorry, spoiler alert. We don't get that far.
He's a goo monster, and that's pretty much it.
But also, this is not the only X-Files reference to nanobots, because we have SR-819, in which Skinner gets the nanobots in him, too.
So is it the same nanobots?
Ooh. Well, obviously Skinner doesn't grow tentacles.
But neither did Jody. So did they manage to recover any of the real? Or...
It would have had to come from Vader.
That dog's always running around without a collar on anyway. He's like... I mean, they take the collar off so that they can't be identified on purpose. It's not just because they're careless. But still,
right.
I mean, the dog's just running loose throughout all of, like, the Pacific Northwest, so...
Yeah.
It's a dog. It's a pretty good chance that you could track him down.
Maybe that's what happened. Maybe Krychek went to the Pacific Northwest on CSM's orders and found Vader at the compound, got the dog's blood sample with the nanobots in it, got out with nobody seeing him, and went to Skinner. And that's how SR-819 happened.
Could be. I think we have a new theory. If you want to tie...
Or maybe they just got the sample from the CDC.
Also true. That's right. Those CDC samples exist. They didn't talk about, like, destroying.
Much less intriguing, but...
I don't know. I like the vision of, like, Krychek, like, chasing after, like, a lab through the trees. Come here, boy.
In the forest. Come here, boy.
You got a steak. You want a treat?
And you know that the dog would not
out of my
trust...
eyes. You want a treat?
The dog would not trust Krychek.
No. It's a pretty smart dog.
No way.
Pretty smart dog. It seems to know who to trust.
Mm.
Kind of maybe too smart. Because, I don't know.
Yeah.
I've never known a lab that wasn't, like, super friendly to everybody.
Right?
I mean, I guess not the goo monster. A dog might be suspicious of that, but...
And he's protecting Jody. He's got to keep his boy safe. So, that's important. He's a good boy. He's a good dog.
Good dog, Vader.
Doing what he needs to do. Mm-hmm. So we have a little bit of a sidetrack when Mulder and Scully go to the post office to track down this guy who sent a letter from the animal rights activist people. That's a little bit of a sidetrack, I think. But it leads them to some stuff later. So I guess it's important. It was necessary.
It didn't take too long. I mean, they're trying to figure out who blew up the lab, and then CSM basically was trying to pin it on this basically kook.
Yeah.
You know, the kind of guy that just doesn't really do anything, but he'll write a lot of letters and like thinks he's doing something.
It's like Twitter now.
Yeah.
Like you get on Twitter and you think that all your tweets are making a difference.
This is exactly the type of guy that would be like tweeting out conspiracy theories constantly or resharing Facebook posts. But when it comes to
when it comes time to like actually do the thing, he runs away.
Exactly.
We also have Patrice and Jody are hiding out in the cabin. Then Mulder and Scully go to find the veterinarian, and they see the blood sample with the flecks of weird stuff. And they're like, what is this? We don't know. What did you think about the morgue scene with Edmund?
Oh, this is
I wanted to talk to you about that one.
Yeah, so this is the scene
the assistant.
Yeah, so this is where this is like the most true horror moment in the whole book. Because we got the dead security guard in the freezer. You know, they're waiting for it to be picked up by the CDC or whatever. And then the morgue assistant hears the knocking inside. And I'm like, do not go open that door. Like, he knows which drawer it's coming from. It's the creepy blob-like dude. He knows the autopsy has been done on the blob-like dude. I don't know why he needed to open the door.
He is far less fearful than I would have been. Like he's like, hey, I'll get you out of there, don't worry.
I guess he's more thinking of like, oh, maybe there's a chance, and then there's tentacles, because the nanobots are basically trying to reanimate the corpse, which is what they did to the dog, although the dog wasn't dead and or it was dead but didn't have like an autopsy or anything. But pounding. If I'm ever in a morgue, especially by myself, and I hear a knocking coming from the drawers, I am not going to be opening those doors. I will be exiting the building, and then I will contact somebody else to deal with that, and then I will still be alive. Though he did survive. He didn't get touched. He thought
fast. I would not have imagined lowering the temperature on the freezer and freezing it to death, or like just freezing it into submission.
Yeah. Edmund has potential.
He does. He's a smart guy. He is going to study his way to the medical examiner.
Exactly. That was like the definite. Most of the book is like just like a chase. We're chasing after Jody Tiss, and then this was the pure like the knocking and the really good suspense in that too, because it's like, is somebody else going to die? And even the worst part, because the nanobots spread as soon as they're touched. If Edmund gets touched, then it's exposed throughout the whole thing. Would it get out and boom, the whole morgue's taken over? Like, would it have gone into the other bodies that are in there and tried to reanimate them? So
that would have been interesting to see.
And then it becomes a zombie novel, pretty much. Or maybe that's what really happens, but nobody knows, because you'll have to read to find out.
There you go. Only you and I know, Lauren, the truth.
Apparently. And Kevin J. Anderson knows.
And Kevin J. Anderson. After that, Mulder and Scully get the clue about the survivalist compound, and Darren, the brother, uncle. So they go to the survivalist compound. They accidentally find it, kind of.
They ask around a bunch and eventually get there, which...
And they, like, follow a dog or something, don't they?
Yeah, it's a different dog, because there's lots of dogs.
There's lots of dogs running around in the forest in this book. There are just so many dogs running around.
I think it's supposed to be like a German Shepherd or something. But I think they put in because you're made to like think it might be the Vader dog.
Right.
And it's like a false. It's like, no, it's just another dog.
It's a black dog, but it's not a lab. It's a spaniel. Don't you know your dog, Scully? That is essentially what the survivalist lady was like, this is a spaniel, clearly.
Well, if something's moving fast in the woods and you just see like a black...
Give her the benefit of the doubt, right? Like, Scully is a dog person.
Queequeg. I'll never get over that.
Yeah, it was kind of funny because Kevin J. Anderson, he said that he was going to write Queequeg into a book, but then he had to take Queequeg out because they killed him off. He's like, Chris Carter was like, don't put the dog in, actually, because...
No!
His demise is incoming.
But you know what? Just like with anything, we never saw the body, did we?
the collar. That was it.
Yeah, so not the body. So it's possible there's a Queequeg is out there and is having his own adventures that could be its own
zombie Queequeg
spin-off.
Yeah.
Maybe he got out of it somehow. Maybe he's like Vader.
True.
Maybe the dogs are like secretly sharing. I'm just going to keep rewriting things until Queequeg is brought back, which is never going to happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, the dogs could be sharing.
Maybe he made it to the survivalist compound all the way down in Portland.
He's a very, enterprising little fluffball.
Never know. Oh, yeah. And this was where the line was, one of my favorite lines in the book. Darren is talking about why he left this project. And he said that it was getting to be very dangerous because if these nanobots got out, they spread so quickly just with the touch and within a matter of minutes. It's like much faster than Ebola, more devastating. It could circle the globe in a matter of like 2 days or something. And he's like, do you really think the governments of the world could make decisions that fast about a possible pandemic or infection or anything like that? Which, I think Darren was correct. We know
firsthand
that it does take some time for governments to figure out what's going on in the midst of a global
and even when they do know what's
pandemic.
going
on,
what to do about it.
I know, right?
So, I think it's one of those things too. It's the old, how far should we go with science? Because this is more, it's not aliens for this. It really is the science. The scientists created these nanobots. So how far is too far? So like Scully's wondering if she could have taken these and that could have cured her cancer. I mean, she knows she got cured with something mysterious for her own cancer, though it wasn't contagious. But, you think of, a little kid with leukemia. Of course, we'd want to do everything we could to save it. But then you have to think, what if this gets into a healthy person? We don't know enough. What if somebody doesn't want to be cured or, like, live forever? Because these things basically, as far as they know, have made Jodie and Vader immortal. And then there's that whole, this third season of Torchwood, for any Doctor Who Torchwood fans out there. That's what that entire Bill Pullman's in it. Basically, everybody stops dying and what that does to the Earth. And it's one of the best seasons of Torchwood, so I definitely recommend it for X-Files fans. But how dark it gets, because you think it's something good, we don't have to deal with the loss, and it turns out to be something terrible and horrific. If nobody is able to die. So that's why I was thinking of Torchwood, that season of Torchwood, a lot while reading this. Like, this is what would have happened, but on a grotesque scale because we'd all be blobs, plus not dying.
And tentacles. Potentially. Now, depending on which nanobots you get.
I mean, there might be some people that are into that, but I prefer just the number of arms and legs that I currently have.
Yeah. A lot of stuff happens here in the middle, and the action, I like the pacing of the book. I think it goes pretty smoothly.
It goes at you're right, good pace. I mean, questions arise, questions are answered, so it's fairly quick to get through.
One thing that was really interesting to me is how much Scully was emotionally invested in Jodie, because I think there was a point where she said something like, it was not great because she was an FBI agent. She needed to be objective about this investigation, but also this little boy has cancer and I also have cancer. And she was feeling a lot of empathy for that and, concerned for him. So I thought that was a nice moment of development for her character.
So I think they could put maybe just a little bit of that for Mulder, because Scully did have that, and he could use with what's already been done with her cancer arc, because it doesn't really affect her arc too much. It just allows her to bring personal experience we know she's had in past episodes to it. But Mulder saw Scully with cancer. He dealt with that, trying to heal and protect one of the people closest to him, and almost lost her. So, but there's Mulder doesn't seem to care at all that this kid has cancer. I don't remember any lines where he seems overly concerned that there's a kid with terminal leukemia out there running around. He's more like,
I mean,
we have to find the survivalist camp. What's going on?
Well, it didn't seem really like there was a whole lot of Mulder's point of view in this. Just not much from his point of view at all.
I think the most it happens
is mostly Scully.
Yeah, it's towards the end when Mulder gets trapped in the car with the blob man of not Jeremy Dornan.
Yes.
And that was cool too, because it's Mulder doesn't get touched by the nanobots because it's a novelization and there were obviously more episodes.
But almost.
He almost, yeah. So there is some tension there. You're like, ooh, what if he does get touched, but then they come up with a solution for it?
Yeah.
But yeah, tense there. So that was, I think, some of the best Mulder moments in the book is when he's still his sarcastic self too, like with a guy that could like kill him just by leaning over with his pinky finger or what's left of his pinky finger. And how they're driving around in the truck. That was really easy to picture, and it was fun to see. That would have been a fun to see filmed.
Right. Yes. And the trouble with cell phones back in 1997, there was a lot of, I felt like there was a lot of dependency on the fact that the cell phones were not in service. Yeah. And working.
I thought they kept talking about,
so they couldn't communicate very well.
The number of like cell towers there's no cell towers here, so it can't ping on. And I'm like, yes, that's how they work. So, but like, we don't even think about that anymore because because Wi-Fi. Yeah. Now that's what more our concern would be, like, oh, the Wi-Fi is not working here.
Wi-Fi is not working. Oh,
it's a good time capsule of the 90s.
It really is. And he had to pull out his antenna.
Oh, I remember
on the phone. He had like the little flip phones with the antennas.
My first antenna on my first cell phone was probably about like a foot long.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wonder if that would happen now. I mean, maybe people in the Pacific Northwest can tell us, what is the cell service like? Is it still? I know some places in Pennsylvania where I can drive around and it's dead. And we're talking like not far from Philadelphia. We're not talking about like the middle or the northwest of Pennsylvania, like suburban Philadelphia, where there's still really some dead spots.
Here in Georgia, I was driving. There's a few spots. There's actually a dead spot like in the car line at my kid's school. If I'm in the wrong spot and I like have to ease up and park in that one spot, I was having trouble. I was like trying to text Cortlan. I was like, Cortlan, this is not working. Why are you not getting my messages? And I was like, apparently I'm in like the one dead spot of Carline.
This is why, if anybody wants to write fiction, why it's fun being like a historical fiction author. Because if you write anything that's pre-1990s, you don't have to worry about writing around technology. Like,
exactly.
I spent so much time in my last book trying to make sure very clearly that people could not communicate on their cell phones and why they couldn't communicate on their cell phones, and put them in like the most remotest region of Scotland possible where there would be no cell service. Because if you can just call, it solves the problem. And I think that's what we're starting to see here. They've started to have to write around cell phones. You saw Mulder and Scully using their phones all the time to communicate by this point.
Right. It made it too easy. There was no conflict.
No conflict.
Yeah.
No tension.
Yeah. Speaking of tension, this is where we get to like a lot of stuff happening at once in the book. We've got Dorman comes after Jody. He finds Jody and Patrice in the forest. Scully shows up and hears everybody screaming out in the forest. Jody's mom, Patrice, tries to save Jody and give him time to escape. And she tackles Dorman and gets the nanobots and dies immediately. Very sad. Jody gets away. He runs into the woods with Vader. And then, of course, because Dorman is the one that went after Vader in the first place, he also, because if you're going to shoot a dog, why not shoot a kid also? Like, that happens. I mean, come on. So Jody gets shot, but Scully finds him and helps him, and he gets him into the car and is driving around the Pacific Northwest looking for a hospital with an injured child.
Because Jody gets in the back. Jody gets shot in the chest.
Yeah,
like
it's straight
it's not like
in the
grazing,
chest.
Like it's a chest. Now he's breathing. She sees it,
and it was a penetrating wound, which we know from Edmund. When Edmund was studying, we learned the difference between a penetrating wound and a perforating wound.
See, foreshadowing. There you go.
Yep.
So this is the part where cell phones really could have come in handy. Scully can't call Mulder to tell him what happened. Forget why they split up in the first place.
Because I think it was because Mulder wanted to stay with the dead trucker. Because Dorman got in with the trucking logging truck guy and touched them, I guess. And then they found the body. And they were investigating the body, and Mulder's like, I'm going to stay here. But then he stole some guy's truck?
Yeah.
Or borrowed the truck?
That truck's not coming back.
No, it's not. And so Scully went to go find Jody because they had a lead on where the cabin was.
Yeah, that's right. And then Mulder ended up out the cabin. He sees the dead Patrice, and he comes across the Dorman. Now you got me doing it. Who was attacked by... Well, I guess we do that. We do have an example now of Vader attacked Dorman. Vader attacked the blob guy. So there was physical contact there, but Vader was fine.
Yeah,
so
that's
maybe
true.
It does show
he just
that...
had a lot of blood on him.
Yeah.
And it was fizzy. It was fizzy blood.
The best
right?
kind.
Ew.
And then
Do you think that was the nanobots, though?
It probably was some... It's a good description, but it was probably something to do with the nanobots. So this is when Dorman was almost like full-on blob monster, because the dog basically ripped out his throat, but it's all forming back, but he can barely hold himself together and kidnaps Mulder.
Can you imagine being Mulder, like, out in the woods and you see this thing arise from the quagmire of the Pacific Northwest
It's not
woods?
like the first time something like this has happened to Mulder, and it's not the first time something
it's
that
not
happened,
Sasquatch.
has happened in the Pacific Northwest to Mulder, and so...
This is run-of-the-mill for X-Files.
Yeah. I think weirder things have happened to him, though it's pretty high up there on the gross scale.
So Scully's trying to help Jody, but he heals in the car. She thinks he's gonna die, which obviously, like, gunshot wound to the chest, poor kid. But then he gets healed. And he just sits up and he's like, I want some food. The chapters were not very long to begin with, but then at this point, they started getting really short. They were only 1 or 2 pages, a lot of them.
That's a technique I've done too, and I found some readers like it, because it feels like, oh yeah, now the pace is moving quicker as the plot speeds up. And then I've had other readers that are like, it felt like it messed with the overall rhythm and it was annoying to read short chapters. But I like it. You obviously like it. I think it's a personal preference on readers. But just know, if that happens, readers, if you're reading any book and the chapters start to get shorter at the end, it is an intentional choice of the author. No, they didn't just run out of things to say. Thank you, Amazon reviews.
I feel like this might be touching a personal...
I don't read Amazon reviews anymore, Sarah. And neither should you. But that's now we're getting into some other personal author issues.
We digress. We digress. We can save that for later.
I will not be leaving a 1-star review of Antibodies on Goodreads.
Absolutely. No, yeah. This is definitely more stars. Yes. No, absolutely.
But yeah, I like the pacing at the end. I like how, because it really does, the idea of it is that it makes the reader feel like, yeah, things are speeding up here. We're rushing, getting towards the end, the action's a lot quicker. Which, in an episode you can do with editing, and where you place commercial breaks. But in a book, you got to get more creative.
Right, exactly. So things are happening pretty quick now, and everyone winds up at the burned out lab that we started with. So we're circling back to where we were in the beginning, which I kind of like. So we've got Scully and Jody and Vader go back to the lab. They meet Mulder there. Then the guy, Lentz, the government guy, is also... He intercepts a call from Mulder saying that he's going back there or something.
This is a guy we haven't talked about much. He's the cigarette smoking man's dude that's being sent out to... He's the one that set up the bombing of the lab in the first place, because basically they realize how dangerous the nanobots are and they just want to destroy everything.
I liked having a new consortium character.
He's got he establishes the personality of this guy pretty well.
He's kind of like Krychek, but not.
Yeah, he's not an agent. He's more of a he's a bureaucratic. He's an office guy.
Right.
But yeah, somehow he uses technology to intercept the call from Mulder, so they know that they're going to the lab, and then it's basically a 4-way standoff, or 3-way standoff. We got Mulder and Scully with the boy, the blob man, and then CSM's goon.
Yeah. And the government guys. So they just kind of, like, it's like the big climax. They just open fire on Blob Guy, because I would too, probably.
Then he just kind of absorbs all the bullets. And it reminds me, if anybody has been to Hershey Park, they have a candy ride with the kind where you shoot the lasers at the targets, and get points. And it's a gum monster. And so at the end, you're like trying to shoot the gum monster to blow it up. And that's exactly what I was visualizing. This big pinkish blob that they're just firing bullets into, and he's just absorbing and basically laughing, and nobody realizes that, hey, maybe not shoot bullets at a blob monster, because there's nothing to hit. There's like no organs there or anything. You can't.
Yeah. And then the nanobots go extra nuts, because they're trying to do what they're programmed to do, but also they're the rogue ones. So, like, things just go completely haywire with that guy.
Yeah, that's when you, like, really kind of see it. I just imagine him getting bigger and monstrous. I'm not sure. Does that actually happen, or am I just remembering what I wanted to remember?
Mulder and Scully and the boy run away, and then there's some fire happening, and the dog is like running around. Mulder's like hiding. Scully and Jody run out.
They call it the horrific transformation of him. So it's let me go. Jerry, there's actually a sentence that says Jeremy Dorman transformed into a monster before his eyes. All the horrors of wild cellular growth, the reckless spread of a malignant cancer with a mind of its own, extended like some ill-defined creature that had lain dormant inside Dorman's cells. Now it spread forth without a plan. And this cellular assault was unleashed with a predatory mind bent on attack and destruction. Dorman, or what was left of him, managed to grab 2 more attacking agents and kill them using a combination of hands and tentacles, as well as the incredibly virulent plague that lived in the slime on his skin. So he doesn't actually say he blows up or into like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, but I'm imagining a Stay Puft Marshmallow Man with tentacles and slime. Yeah. And then then they all kind of scatter and try to attack them. Walls collapse in the rubble, and so it doesn't actually say. There's a lot there that's left to your own imagination. Again, something that would probably, even though X-Files did a lot of special effects, I think that would have been fairly expensive to try to pull off. To really show that not as horrific as just trying to use your own imagination.
Well, that's one of the fun thing about the novels, is that they can do all these wild and crazy things, and so they got to do big movie budget stuff just in novel form. So
and your brain
still got to happen,
and your imagination gets to be the director, the filmmaker.
Exactly.
Books, man, books are cool. Read books.
They're so fun.
They're movies that play in your mind.
It's magic. I don't even know what happened to Blob Guy at the end. Did he just fall through the floor and die in the fire?
It's left with one of those X-Files ambiguous endings, which again fits the structure of the show, I think. So they I just saw that here. But yeah, there's basically another fire where there was a fire at the ruins.
A fire on top of a fire.
Yeah, and Scully and Mulder are like trapped, but then the dog kind of leads them out, and the dog, Vader, and that's the thing, basically the dog comes to the rescue. Vader runs at Dorman, and then Dorman's wrapping, it says tentacles wrapped around the dog, and the dog's fur is catching fire, and he's just digging, but he's just like biting into Dorman. So basically Vader and Dorman fall somehow into the ruins, further, deeper, like I guess where they went underground. And then everything collapses on top of them. But Mulder, Scully, and then Jody, the boy, make it out. And then we don't know. We know Vader comes back. Jody goes to live with his... I think this is the only point of having the uncle in the survivalist compound, is because orphan Jody now has a place to go live where the government's going to leave him alone. And then while he's there, it's like the last scene that Vader comes back. But we don't know if if they basically find pieces. Lentz finds pieces of Dorman, and they determine that that's going to be enough. But we saw
like a tentacle here, a hand there.
We saw what happened in the morgue, so
some grease. Yeah, and nobody knows what happens to Patrice either. Does she come back to life with tentacles? We don't know.
I guess I guess Lentz's people gather up her body and probably set it on fire.
That's probably
like
true.
They did with the trucker.
Yeah, and then they took the security guard. They just took the whole drawer out of the morgue. Just removed the drawer completely.
Probably for
and
the
kept them there.
best.
And,
I mean, considering tentacles trying to get out. So many tentacles.
Just everywhere.
Yeah.
One key element is that Jody's nanobots cured his cancer, and when he goes to the hospital to get checked out, we realize that they have disappeared and deactivated.
Because his worked the way his dad had designed, which was as soon as they cure or fix whatever's supposed to be wrong, they terminate.
Right.
So something's not supposed to be left immortal. But that didn't, obviously. Either that didn't happen to Vader, or so many poor things keep happening to this dog. That the nanobots just can't shut down because people are constantly shooting the dog, hitting the dog with the car, setting the dog on fire, wrapping tentacles around the dog.
Poor animal.
He still has a happy disposition.
Hopefully by the time he makes it to the survivalist camp, that's it for him. He can just live out his life happy with the other survivalist dogs.
Yeah. And Queequeg. He's going to make it up.
He is. And that's it.
Yeah.
Happy ending? Happy-ish?
Happy-ish. I mean, the boy survives. He gets his dog at least. And he has a family.
Yeah.
He used to be close with his uncle. That's a whole other minor subplot. Is the uncle's cabin.
Yeah.
Cabin sounded nice. I wanted to go out to that nice secluded cabin. But yeah, Mulder and Scully are okay. None the worse for wear.
Yeah.
No nanobot plague.
Heading back to DC. And Lentz has a meeting with CSM. Right at the end.
Yeah, and it doesn't really go well for him.
No. I wonder if Cancer Man got his hands on the nanobots and that's why he comes back after he gets blown up later.
It could be. Or lack of continuity. But we could just say that it's nanobots.
Well, it is the X-Files
it's
still.
What continuity?
Yeah, Adam Lentz made his final report verbally and face-to-face with no paperwork buffers between them. There would be no written record of this investigation, nothing that could be uncovered and read by the wrong sets of prying eyes. Instead, Lentz had to face down the man and tell him everything directly in his own words. It was one of the most terrifying experiences he had ever known.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to do that.
He saw Blob Guy with the tentacles, but Cigarette Smoking Man is more terrifying than that.
Well, because you don't know what he's going to do.
That's true.
I mean, you know what a blob tentacle man is trying to do to you, and it might, but you can't see past that layer of smoke and those cold eyes. Yeah, is this guy going to let me walk out of this office, or kill me here, or have me killed in my sleep? It's the unknown, Sarah.
It could be botulism. It could be a heart attack for a man of his age.
That's true.
It could be anything. You never know with CSM.
I don't think this character shows up anywhere else. He's not in any of other. The Andersons books better. That Adam Lentz doesn't pop up anywhere.
But it is interesting to know that Cancer Man has people everywhere. We see all the people on the show, but his reach is so far and wide. It's a lot to keep up with.
It is. Probably why he smokes, yeah. The stress.
Probably.
The stress of it all.
Just all that micromanaging, man. He's got Skinner to deal with. He's got Mulder and Scully to keep up with. He's got to manage Krychek and Luis Cardinal. And
who knows what else?
Marita Covarrubias. All of the people.
Fingers and pies. Lots of fingers and lots of pies.
So many. Well, do you have any final thoughts, Lauren, on this book?
I think overall, it's a really, if people are you've watched all the episodes a ton of times and you're looking for something new, I would definitely go for the novelizations. And this is a fun one. If you like that era, that particular era of Mulder and Scully, and you really like her cancer arc too, if that's read this. Reads like an episode You get a little bit of the conspiracy with the CSM appearance, great characterization of Mulder and Scully. Just know that the dog survives. If you don't like seeing animals get hurt, you can kind of skim those passages, but the dog turns out 100% okay anyway. But yeah, it is, like I said earlier, it's like a fun missing episode and a quick read. So if you want to don't feel like rewatching another episode for the umpteenth time, you want to mix it up a little bit, you can still get it. I got my copy on Thrift Books, I think.
Yeah.
Or the Kindle, you can still buy it on Kindle and stuff, and have a good time with it.
Absolutely. I agree. It's a fun, fast read, something to spend a Sunday morning with, or Saturday afternoon if you want something fun. Yeah, it's good times. Good times. Lauren, thank you so much for joining us. We don't have a mailbag like we talked about before. This is it.
Well, if anybody does reach it, they can read it after this. They can reach out to it.
Yes, we would love to know. Lauren, where can we find you online?
You can find me on Twitter at Lauren A. Forry, so it's LaurenAForry. That's where I usually am, and an Instagram with the same handle, which is normally just pictures of my dogs. I do have some stuff going on. Unfortunately, I can't talk about the stuff that I have going on. I'm not permitted to yet. But one thing I can say is my last novel, They Did Bad Things, comes out in paperback in the spring.
Yay.
So if you like murder mystery set in Scotland with some bad people and some sarcastic humor, it's not sci-fi, this one. No supernatural in this, just kind of murder and people getting picked off one by one. That comes out in paperback in end of February. Nobody's actually told me, but it's early next year, early 2022.
Yeah.
And
excellent.
Yeah. The other stuff in the future I can talk about, but not yet.
Yes. I can personally recommend They Did Bad Things. We've got the X-Files Basement over on Facebook. If you decide you want to read this book and leave some comments over there and talk about it, we're there. We've got the Xcast on Twitter at the X_cast and on Instagram at the XCastPod. And you can find me, Sarah L. Blair, on Twitter or on Instagram at author.sarah.blair. Soon, I may have another book coming out. So,
yay!
Yes. Which is exciting. It's part of my Ties of Darkness series, available now.
And you should read them because they're fun. And they are supernatural and have far more X-Files references than mine do.
A lot of X-Files references.
It's so much fun. It is so much fun reading and trying to find all the X-Files references. I love it.
Yes. I write for my audience, which is X-Files fans, which I am one of. So
then you know the audience well.
It's true. Happy reading, everyone. I hope you guys will check out this book because it is worth checking out. Until then, trust no one.
Elsewhere on We Made This.
Right in the childhood.
But you've never watched Red Dwarf?
Nope. I hear it's got a lot of fandom, like a strong fandom.
It's very culty, and when you look at it, the longevity is almost second to none. The first episode was in 1988, and the most recent film, which was like a TV movie, was just last year in 2020.
It's very similar to like Doctor Who in a way, isn't it? Like the way it's like you say, the longevity and stuff like that. And I think it's stuff as well that gets picked up on, from Americans with UK stuff. You can see sort of why Americans sort of like, because I feel like more Americans like this stuff than this is what they think of as British TV, is like your Doctor Who's, your Red Dwarf.
Pick a disc.
So he's talking about the sound, isn't he? When he crescendos to Big Love, Which is and that song Big Love is a great way to kick off the album. It's it's a really sort of if I can say this, it's a man swinging his around in musical form. He's there going. One of the lyrics says, "I wake up but only to." It's literally like I'm putting myself out there. I'm being the alpha. That's what the song is all about. Being a player. It's a great way. And when they do it live, they do the song very differently. It's just with a guitar, and it's a lot faster. And it's that's on one of the live albums, and one of the greatest hits as well, I believe.
Movieversaries.
It won 3 Oscars, Best Picture, Best Director, Best Screenplay, was nominated for a bunch of others as well, including cinematography, editing, and music. In 2006, the WGA has announced it was the greatest screenplay ever written. That was, of course, 12 years before Bohemian Rhapsody was released, though. Timing is everything.
Yeah. It's okay. Like, some giants have to topple.
Check out all of these shows and more on the We Made This podcast network. The Xcast and X-Files podcast was created by Tony Black and is produced and hosted by Carl Sweeney, Sarah Blair and Kurt North.
You can find the podcast on Twitter at the X_cast, on Facebook by typing in the Xcast, and in our group, X-Files Basement, the Xcast podcast fan group, and on Instagram at the Xcast pod.
Don't forget, you can support the show by becoming a member on Patreon. Our patrons get early access to episodes, behind-the-scenes chats with our hosts and a thriving community of X-Files, and other premium interviews and specials. To find out more and subscribe, you can go to patreon.com/thexcast. That's patreon.com/thexcast.
We are also part of the We Made This podcast network, full of popular culture shows, including our Millennium series, The Time Is Now. You can find all of our shows at our website, wemadethispod.com, or via Twitter at wemadethispod.
Thanks for listening and keep watching the skies.